Hello, everybody. My name is Todd Levi. I'm with ACT Australia. We tell stories. Thank you very much for making the time to listen to my story just now. I want to start with a story about a bloke called Des Shepherd. Now, Des was a bit of a whinger. He was a smart ass, yeah, but I quite liked him. He was good for a laugh and he did work hard when you needed him to. Des was working for a little company that did a lot of contract work for a local council. And one day, Simon, the boss man, sent Des and his supervisor, Jake, out to fix a broken pipe that was causing a bit of localized flooding. Not a big job. They hoped to get it done and then back onto a bigger job that was getting a bit behind. Anyway, a few things went wrong, including the weather. And by the time Simon got out onto site with a bit of extra gear and to find out what the hell was going on, Des was climbing into a trench that was a bit deeper than it should have been, in soil that was a bit wetter than it should have been. And when that trench collapsed on him, Jake and Simon got on the machinery and they put that aside and they got out the shovels and then they started digging with their bare hands. And they dug and they dug and they kept digging until long after Des had gone blue and still. That story, with slightly different details around it, happens several times a year in Australia. And every time it gets me. When I hear it on the news, there it is again. And none of the people it happens to ever wanted it to happen. Most of them are good people who had good safety procedures in place. They had their inductions, they had their briefings, they had risk assessments, dynamic risk assessments, JSEAs, take fives, you name it. But if you don't actually feel the need to take it seriously, if accidents are something that happened to somebody else over there, somewhere else, or it all gets a bit too procedural or a bit too boring, it will happen again and again. And it does. Before we go on, I'd just like to direct you to a little poll question we've got. Answer it anytime you feel like. It's a very simple one. Have you ever seen someone walk out of an induction or a safety briefing of some kind and then immediately do the dumbest, most obvious thing they have just been told not to do? I have seen it far too many times. We'll see how many of you have a bit later. Now, I've come to the workplace health and safety space through a fairly odd route. I've been a voiceover artist and an actor for many, many years. And part of that has been narrating a very large number of workplace health and safety programs, videos, presentations. Some of them have been very good, engaging, quite powerful and effective. Others, not so much. Unfortunately, the majority. They will tick all the regulatory boxes. But if as many do, they bore people half to death within the first 30 seconds. It's not just a waste of money, however much it cost. It's positively dangerous. The people most likely to feel the need to take safety seriously, to prioritise it, are those who have seen terrible things go wrong, or if they're lucky, seen them almost go wrong. Unfortunately, that's not a great way to learn. We prefer to deliver those lessons to generate that feeling through the use of stories. Des's story is one of those. It's a piece of industrial theatre that we perform for blue-collar workers in a range of industries, not unlike those of the council workers. But we have a whole raft of plays, most of them based on real incidents, designed to have an impact on a specific audience, be they in construction, in government, senior management, on projects that take multiple decades and cost multiple billions of dollars, or office workers in a business at risk of security issues. We put stories on stages, in boardrooms, in hotels, on factory floors, in lunchrooms, and sometimes even in theatres that the audience, whomever they may be, can directly relate to. Stories and characters in which they can see themselves. Stories that resonate and make them feel that safety is not about someone else, but about them and their workplaces. The story of Des and Jake and Simon is from a play called The Highwayman. We usually do that one to a room full of people in high-vis gear who've been brought in for a safety training morning or something. Most of them have been to these things before, they know what to expect and that. I quite like getting the feel of a room before we do a show. And in that room in particular, it's usually pretty upbeat because they've come in, they've got the morning off, they've probably been given a free breakfast, they're catching up with people, they're telling lies about what they did on the weekend, etc., etc. It's all a bit raucous, takes a while for them to settle down, get quiet enough before we can begin, get the thing over with. Yeah, right, okay. By the time Des dies, you can hear a pin drop. And we are a bit sneaky like that. We make you like Des because it's almost impossible not to feel something when you have just seen someone you like be killed. The next scene involves Jake being given a hard time by a prosecuting lawyer.
And can I remind you what the Health and Safety Act requires and says about trench digging? Before digging any trench, pit, tunnel, or excavations, decide what temporary support will be required and plan the precautions to be taken.
Well, we did plan it. In under a metre in clay soil, you don't need shuttering.
Well, you've just told us that the plans are frequently wrong. Surely you should have prepared to dig a deeper trench, one that did require support.
Well, we talked about it.
You talked about it.
No, we did a proper risk assessment.
Which proved to be woefully inadequate.
Well, things changed.
Indeed, they did.
That was nearly 12 months ago. Every time I close my eyes, I see that day. I can't eat, I can't work. To go and pick my kids up from school and I see his kids are standing there.
In the real story this play is based on, Jake was prosecuted and actually did jail time. And when we put that on stage, every person in that room puts themselves in Jake's chair and none of them ever want to be there for real. Now, the beauty of theatre, of it only being a story, however convincingly told, is that we can revisit it. Through facilitation, we analyse actions and behaviours, we discuss them with the audience at any stage of the process, and we get real buy-in from those people.
Behaviours and communications, what could they do?
If I'm doing the right thing here, I'm upholding values.
Did we use all of those 5 steps? Ticked which ones we used and which ones we might do better if we had another go.
How's Mark feeling?
No bad news up kind of culture that had been created.
After conducting the investigation, was the first time he found out there'd been a near miss.
Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong. But what can we do?
We can also change the outcome where it works, where it suits our purposes. We sometimes then reenact a scene, incorporating suggestions from the audience. And sometimes just a small change can make a massive difference and completely avoid a catastrophe. It's one of the really difficult things about our business. If we do our jobs right, nobody notices because nothing happens. We can show the difference. Of course, it's not just in heavy industries where behaviours can have serious consequences. Businesses can be seriously damaged in all sorts of ways. Mental health and emotional issues affecting just one member of a team can have catastrophic consequences for everyone else in that team and for the business as a whole. What is the right way to deal with something like that? What's the wrong way? We have stories that can show.
Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm just a bit much. Sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry. There's always days like this.
Yeah.
There are also stories that we all know, stories that made headlines around the world, but that hold very serious lessons, very good lessons for large-scale, long-term projects, where multiple failures over multiple years can have terrible consequences. We have plays that examine not only the detail, but the human stories behind the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster, behind the Piper Alpha and Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosions. We also have a piece about the space shuttle disasters, where political and systemic failures combined with human errors decades later to leave us with horrifying images the world will never forget.
Damn it, we're going around in circles here. Why are we even discussing it? We've made our recommendation.
Because we haven't proven without a shadow of a doubt that it is not safe to launch.
But this is a flight safety review. Our job is to prove it is safe to launch, and we don't think it is. And NASA wants to see some data, and you can't show them what they want. What they want is for us to recommend a launch.
From an engineering standpoint.
Look, just for one moment, can you take out the engineering hat and put on your management hat? It wouldn't be pretty.
No, but who thinks it would work?
We can confirm that the shuttle is behind schedule. It was to land in Florida. There you see what appears to be multiple pieces of the shuttle. But we cannot.
Take off your engineering hat and put on your management hat. Now, there's a loaded line. Now, they're big stories, they're powerful stories, but they can be broken down to show that on the human level, what difference that can make. That last piece was a large production for a large audience, but we also do shows for quite small audiences, just a few key people. It can make an enormous difference. Whatever the audience, whatever the industry, getting people to understand the need to prioritise safety is really important. Getting them to feel it is something else entirely.